Welcome to Have a Life Teaching, the podcast designed for educators who are dedicated to enhancing their teaching practice and creating a positive impact on their students' lives. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the world of education, exploring a wide range of topics related to curriculum, instruction, and assessment in K-12 schools. Together, we'll learn from the brightest minds in the education field. So if you're a passionate educator who's ready to take your teaching practice to the next level, join us as we explore the exciting world of education. My name is John Shimbari, signing in and saying, let's have a life teaching. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Have a Life Teaching podcast. What makes an urban school a good urban school? Why are they relevant? And although I don't think this is necessarily true, you do have the image of urban schools as being violent places where students are not vested or engaged in their learning. Tonight, we're going to be talking about what urban schools do right, what they could do better at, and we're also going to be talking to educators in the field, improving city schools every day. We're going to be joined tonight by Michael Casserly. Michael is a current senior consultant with the Council of Great City Schools. He also happens to be the former executive director and the author of a great new book, The Enduring Promise of America's Great City Schools. He's going to have a lot of tips for us in terms of what makes those city schools so promising. And then we are also being joined by Tracey Quarles. Tracey is principal of K-150, which is an elementary public school in the city of Brooklyn, New York. And the reason Tracey's on the show tonight is because she took K-50 from the state receivership list, off of that list, and has turned it into a promising city schools where students are growing and achieving every day. So both my guests tonight, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Tracey, could you tell us a little bit about why your school got on the, I know this predates you and your administration of the school, but to your knowledge, how did the school end up on receivership? And what are some of the things you did to get it off of that list?
That's a great question. When I walked into the school building, it was already a state school. The ELA proficiency scores was 2%. The math proficiency score was 3%. I didn't know what I was walking into in terms of the culture of the school or what the teachers were doing, what the parents were doing. I think my first year was really gauging what was good going on in the school and then modifying the rest. There was a lot of work in making sure that this school comes off of receivership. We had support from the district, but it was really about changing the culture of the school, the culture of learning, as well as systems and structures that were in place. It was about modifying that and going into classrooms and making sure teachers are teaching. It is a passion of mine. I am a product of a New York City public school, and I want to make sure that this public school has the same access as any school in New York City. So that was my passion, making sure that these kids are getting everything that they need to be successful. We're still working on changing a lot of things, creating partnerships with community-based organizations, going out into the community, bringing resources for parents, resources in for our students. That's what made the school turn around. Parents really don't know what's out there in terms of their support. Surveying parents, trying to get what they need. How can the school be a part of your family? How can we support you? That's my only question. How can we support you? We're here to support you. So I think building relationships with families in the community, creating partnerships with different community-based organizations to bring in mental health, bring in GED classes, talk about food insecurities in the community, creating those strong partnerships helped me and supported me in changing the school.
I love hearing that, Tracey. Now, again, you said you came into the school after it got on that list and you inherited a staff. How did you, because it's always easier to bring in your own staff, but you had an existing staff. So what were some of the things you did to bring these people along in your mission?
I think setting clear expectations of what our scholars need, setting clear expectations for everyone. So when you walk in the door, everything is left behind and your only mission is educating students. Very clear.
Michael, in terms of what Tracey is saying and the research that you did for your book, is there anything in particular that resonates with what Tracey is saying in terms of good practices to engage in when you are trying to improve a city school?
Yes, absolutely. Matter of fact, I was wondering in Tracy's answer whether or not she had read the book because she is actually practicing a lot of what makes an urban school a good urban school, and probably any school really good. She rattled off just in her first answer issues of culture and leadership and strong instruction and high expectations and collaboration with the community and parents. All four or five of those things are exactly the kind of thing that distinguishes successful and effective schools from schools and school districts, frankly, that are not as effective. You'd be surprised at how many people don't do it across the country, but Tracey has actually hit on kind of the magic formula why schools and school districts can succeed.
Is there anything that, Michael, that Tracey said that you think it was the silver bullet in terms of making those changes? What specifically do you think, if there is a ranking that she did that will give an administrator who's trying to turn around a school bang for their buck?
Well, I think the thing that really stuck out to me was when she mentioned high expectations for the kids, high expectations for everybody's performance. Because my hunch is that what Tracy did with those expectations is that she turned them into the culture of the school, and it became just the atmosphere, the air that everybody breathed. And it is those expectations and the expectations of the leader of the school, in this case, Tracey, the principal, that really sets the tone and the direction and the vision for what is going to happen for and with kids. So it, to me, amongst all the things that she mentioned, it was the high expectations that she had and how she turned it into the very culture of the school and how it was going to work with the kids to build better outcomes.
I love that, Michael. So now, Tracey, in terms of establishing this culture of high expectations, is there anything specifically that you did in this regard, or could you tell us a little bit more about what a culture of high expectations looks like?
Just from coming into the school, starting at the safety agent desk, saying good morning, coming into the building, saying good morning to staff, creating that main office where everyone feels welcome. Also, I stand outside every morning to greet my children, say good morning, how was your day? Make sure I get to the building at 6:30 in the morning, walk the building with the custodian to make sure the heat is regulated or things are functioning and classrooms are clean, to make sure breakfast is ready to go. Just those simple things changed how people viewed the school and even the students. They know when they walk in a building, they're going to get a good morning, they're going to get a hug, or they know that they're going to have warm breakfast, not just cold cereal. They know that when they go to their classrooms are clean. So it was really starting with the physical plant that helped me build culture in the classroom, starting with custodians, making sure the building is clean. I shouldn't be walking up the stairs and the stairs are dirty. I shouldn't be running my fingers down the staircase and I pick up dust. Our kids don't deserve that. So we're going to start there. And it took like a year to get that together. The bare minimum is not it. It can't be. So when you walk in this building, you're making sure that the instruction is sound. So if you need to sit with me or if I need to model for you in your classroom, I'm going to do that because the expectations are high. If you need help with unpacking standards, I will sit with you. I have an open door policy. I walk the building. I want to make myself visible to the teachers to know that I am there to support them. And I'm also there to help them teach. Setting those expectations the first year was very challenging when people have a different mindset, because we have to shift that mindset to giving our kids the best.
Yeah, John, what's really interesting in what Tracey is saying is that if you look at the history of urban education in this country, particularly urban public education, it was marked some time ago by low expectations of too many of our kids. And it became to characterize urban education in general. And it wasn't until the onset of the college and career ready standards some years ago that urban schools really embraced of those high expectations that those standards set. And it allowed urban educators all across the country to say, look, we want the same high and good things for our kids as everybody else wants for their kids. And it was part of the formula by which urban education in this country really started to turn around and improve through all of the kinds of things that Tracey is talking about.
And Michael, in your book, and I'm sure you've done research around this, are there particular schools or districts that you might want to shout out that are doing college and career readiness work or really setting the bar high when it comes to high expectations?
A number of urban systems across the country really stand out in my mind in my research. The District of Columbia and Washington, D.C. Really made substantial changes along the lines that Tracey is describing, but on a system-wide district level where they were raising expectations, setting a culture of excellence, paying attention to the quality of classroom and instruction, paying attention to the collaborations that they were building and the like. And it all started with the standards they were setting. Chicago is another one of those. Now, forget everything that you think you know about Chicago and its politics. I'm talking about Chicago and its academics. It really embraced the standards that were being set out and aligned its instructional work and its leadership and the direction it was setting for its people all around those high expectations that the standards were setting. Dallas, Texas, same thing. Miami, Florida, same thing. San Diego, California. Interestingly enough, because leadership is such an important component of all of this, that when the superintendent of the Miami schools left Miami and went to lead the Los Angeles school system, he is now infusing Los Angeles with many of the same high expectations that he had breathed into Miami. Miami is still improving, and now Los Angeles, for the first time, is really starting to show some substantial gains on its academic performance.
I had the opportunity of visiting Broward County in Florida, and we went into multiple schools, and they're doing great things.
Broward's another one that has really shown some substantial progress, and there are other big city school districts that have shown substantial progress. Kansas City, Missouri, Denver, Colorado, and other big cities, even Detroit. Many people do not think of as a high performing district, and it's still not a high performing district, but the amount of improvement that they have seen over the last 5 or 6 years or so is really eye-popping. It's still a low-performing system, but its leadership is doing all the things at a systems level that Tracey is talking about doing at a school level, and they're seeing much, much better results now than they'd ever seen before.
Michael, you were saying something that really piqued my interest. You were giving the example of the Miami superintendent going over to Los Angeles and implementing some of the great sauce there. And Tracey was talking about what she did to move and to improve the results in her school. So Tracey, following up on what Michael is saying there, what supports did you get? Did you get any supports or did you have any mentors helping you think through what your school improvement plan was going to be?
Absolutely. When I took over this school, I was under the leadership of Dr. Mia Teresa Pape. She has become a friend and a mentor of mine. And she ran a very successful school. And she used to come in all the time knowing that how the culture of the school was. So she used to visit me regularly, just so we can see like some of the things that we need to change or modify. We didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We wanted to make sure that what's good is good, maybe modifying it and taking it up a notch. Her leadership, walking me through this process, because that was my first year as a principal. I came from the superintendent's office, never been a principal before. She really supported me, and the team supported me in making sure that I had strong systems and structures in place, making sure that I was in the classroom every single day, making sure I was conferencing with teachers, giving strong and valuable feedback, and just monitoring that, not just giving it to them, going back into the classroom and make sure that they're implementing the recommendations and suggestions that I've given.
I love that because again, it's that support that's going to help replicate best practices. So then, Michael, going back to you, whether or not it's in your capacity as a current consultant or from your time as executive director of Great City Schools, what does Great City Schools do in this regard in terms of replicating best practice, serving as a hub of mentorship for urban leaders? Could you walk us through a little bit about what the organization does to help with this replication?
First of all, it embraced the standards movement, thought that it was important that urban schools had the same high standards that everybody else did. So we worked with the original authors of the College and Career Ready Standards to make sure that urban schools all across the country were embracing this movement. We also provide lots of professional development and capacity building to these schools. We provide lots of data by which these school districts in the urban areas across the country can kind of measure and assess and gauge the progress that they are making so they can see whether or not the efforts that they are making are actually producing results, and they can kind of compare and contrast themselves with each other to see which reforms seem to be working, which ones don't, and the like. We also do a lot of convening and meeting with chancellors and the superintendents and the chief academic officers and the chief operating officers to share best practices and to help them realize what's producing results in other cities. So we also do a lot of technical assistance to the districts where we go in and take a look at the instructional programs, the special education programs, the English language learner programs, and see what could be strengthened in those programs based on what we see a good practice to be in other cities, and then give the cities that we are visiting the best strategic advice that we can give them about how to strengthen their programs to get stronger and better student outcomes.
Tracey, where do you see taking your school next?
So the next steps is still setting those high expectations. I want to increase enrollment. I want to make sure that every scholar in the neighborhood has the best education, and just going out there. We've been visiting different schools and different daycare centers to try to leverage more students for the school. I just want my school to grow. These kids deserve the best of the best. And I will do everything in my power to make sure that instruction is strong and to make sure that they have opportunities outside of the school building, because I believe education is not just in the building, it's outside, to visit New York City and see the beautiful history of the city. I want them to be exposed to everything.
One thing really struck me in what Tracey said in one of her answers earlier on when she was talking about making sure the building was in good shape and it was clean and all of that. And it was a way of beginning to set high expectations and a culture of excellence in the schools. One of the things that we did over the years was to look at where people started the process of trying to bolster their school and make it an excellent school. And we were actually really surprised because we thought we were going to see some commonality in where people started this process, but we never did find it. Tracey actually was probably right in picking kind of the operations and appearance of the school, but lots of other people pick other things to start with, and we ultimately concluded that it didn't really matter very much. The leader of the school or the leader of the district should just pick the one that presents the greatest opportunity and go with it. Pick some low-hanging fruit, something that can be done that is visible, everybody will recognize, and everybody will recognize it for what it is. You're trying to get the school to be better. But we ultimately concluded, and this is as much for other principals that might be listening in and other superintendents as well, it almost didn't matter where you started, just start and make sure that the place where you start is recognizable as setting high expectations and meant to improve the overall atmosphere for everybody in the building.
And can I add, Michael, thank you for that, because I know that probably research that it's just find something to attach to. So for my school community, we sit in the middle of NYCHA housing, and the community has this gray cloud over. I call it a gray cloud because of its location and the history of it. So walking into a building and seeing the building in the condition that it was, knowing that my kids were coming out of NYCHA to come into a building, this has to be a safe haven for my children, because they need to know that when I come in a building, I'm safe, I'm fed, I'm walking into a clean environment, I'm going to school. It's the place to be. That was my first thing walking in. And I'm sure if you gravitate to other issues in the building, yes, make it great, make it presentable. But for me, it was just really about, what are the kids walking into?
You did something really important, and that is you assessed your environment and the environment that the kids lived in 24 hours a day, and you picked that dynamic that was going to send a different signal to your kids and the parents and to the community. Very smart.
Thank you.
So now, Michael, Tracey was talking about the challenge that she's still dealing with, which is attendance. Is this something that you find even the good city schools are still struggling with? What are those areas of improvement, even in good city schools, that we need to keep our eye on?
Yeah, this is a really important question, and I'm not sure that I've got the greatest of answers for you, because this is an issue that schools all over the country are dealing with. I think it's particularly acute in the schools in urban areas. But one of the things that we have not figured out yet is how we are going to completely turn this around. There's pretty good evidence that it is starting to turn around. Attendance is coming back up again in big city schools all across the country, but it's no place where it was before the pandemic.
Yeah.
We are looking at places like St. Paul, Minnesota, that are doing some kind of interesting program work, building in special programming for their unique population that they have in that city, special language programs, special culture programs that not only attract the kids, but attract the parents as well. A lot of door-to-door and home visits and the like. Everybody across the country is doing these kinds of things, but we've noticed in St. Paul that it seems to have resonated a little bit better, and they're building back a little faster than some of the other cities. But we're starting to watch the attendance in big city schools all across the country to see who's making some breakout progress here, so we can figure out what it is they are doing and passing those lessons on to others across the country.
And Michael, I'm going to backtrack for a moment. Why is this important? Why is it important that we don't forget our urban schools?
Urban schools are, in a lot of ways, are the backbone not only of the education system in this country, but in many ways they are critical to the economy, the democracy, and the culture of this nation. We do lots of things in terms of the performance that we produce, the gains that we produce, the welcoming that we have for the immigrants who are coming to this country, that help feed the overall democracy of this country at a time when issues of democracy are on everybody's mind. We are a force to strengthen democracy. We are a force for strengthening overall economic conditions in the country because as we improve, it raises wages and the economic benefit of education across the country. I think a lot of people would be surprised, but that the return on investment in urban schools is as good as the return on investment in any school across the country. And we are important because we help set the overall culture of the nation. I mean, if you take a look at the graduates that we have out of big city schools in this country, some of the most influential folks in the nation. We just heard about Quincy Jones dying, who was a force of nature in terms of helping the culture and setting the kinds of conditions. He was a graduate of the Seattle public schools. If I took any time at all to rattle off the famous graduates of the New York City schools, it would take the rest of the program. The talent that we produce and their contributions to the nation are absolutely game-changing. They are a critical institution that should not be jeopardized and should be supported at every turn by the leadership of this country.
And then, Michael, how do you feel the push towards allowing public funding for private schools? How do you think that will affect public district schools, especially when the new administration comes in?
Well, I don't know that a proposal like this is even going to pass in Congress. To tell you the truth, there's not necessarily a big support for this. It has come up before Congress any number of times over the last 20 or 25 years. Every once in a while, it will pass the House of Representatives, but it has never passed the Senate. And it gets bipartisan opposition every time it comes up. I expect that the administration will advocate vigorously for it, but at this point, it's not clear to me that they necessarily have the votes. We will see, but historically, it's not been one of those things that Congress has been crazy to embrace.
And Tracey, if you had a crystal wand to change anything, what would you change?
In terms of urban schools, I would like to change the formula of how it is funded. When you're looking at attendance and you're looking at enrollment, funding is based off of that. And because you have a small school, you don't get enough funding to provide certain things for students. And if we can advocate for our students to have this program, it just magically appears. We're not standing out knocking on the local politicians' doors asking for funding to make sure our students have an opportunity or have access or equitable opportunity access. It's a systematic thing that needs to change. The politicians need to come together and have discussions about these small schools in the urban area and how they can support us in providing excellent programming for our students.
Tracey makes me think of the follow-up question I want to ask you, Michael, which is, what do good city schools do, or what are some urban school systems out there doing to make funding more equitable?
They obviously can't do much about the funding that they get from the state other than to go and lobby the state legislature to make it more equitable in how it is they distribute the money. Urban school systems over the years have gotten better and better at making sure that the resources inside of the city have become more equitable. And by more equitable, I mean more funding going to schools that have the highest needs and making sure that they have the resources that they need in order to provide for the students who are in that school. There was a point where some urban school systems did just the opposite of that, and that is they spent more money on some high-end schools or magnet schools and let the poorer schools go on their own. Over the last 15 years or so, urban schools have gotten better at redoing their internal allocation systems, so more money is spent on the high need schools.
We look at grants to help support classrooms and support trips and support things that we have in the school communities. For me, it was all about really reaching out to the resources that are out there lobbying for those, creating partnerships with different organizations that can support the school community. We're not just sitting down waiting for the state funding. We are out there really trying to put together money so that our students can have valuable experiences.
And then, Michael, what would you change about urban education?
We've actually spent a lot of time over the years trying to figure out what successful, and by successful, I mean school districts that were really improving in a substantial kind of way the academic outcomes of their students. What those districts and the schools in those districts were doing that districts that were not seeing as much improvement were not doing. What's going on here? Is there a magic wand? Interestingly enough, in school districts where the performance was not improving as fast, we often found instruction that was fractured, too many people kind of doing whatever they wanted to do, systems that were not aligned with one another, people not paying any attention to what the standards were saying, weak leadership, and no shared responsibility for the outcomes of kids. So if I had a magic wand, I would wave it towards the folks who were not doing what the research was really saying produced better results for kids, and saying, look at the folks over here that are getting better results. Look what they're doing. Do that.
And what I like about that is we can get away from this attitude, because I sometimes see in some schools, not Tracey School, where I consult this attitude, well, they don't have our kids. Oh, they have other kids. They're not as bad as our kids. And what I'm hearing, Michael, is that you at Great City Schools, that you are making those connections and you are highlighting case studies where schools with similar students are getting better results.
Absolutely. I think the good news and the note of optimism that I try to send in the book that I write is that improvement, not just a little bit of improvement, but a lot of improvement, is very possible in urban schools, and every bit as possible in urban schools as it is any place else in the country if we have what Tracey is talking about, and that is a culture of high expectations and the wherewithal to deliver on those expectations for kids. While we have lots of challenges in the urban settings, relying on what each other are doing to improve gives us some agency in the work that we are doing, and doesn't allow us to fall back on this kind of woe is us kind of situation, but it gives us the wherewithal, the agency, if you will, to improve in the way that we know that our kids deserve.
So now, Tracey, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want others out there leading urban schools? What do you want to tell them?
Our scholars are our future. We have to make sure that our future is great. We want to make sure our scholars are great to go into the future. Just to make sure that you have a passion for this, to make sure it takes a little bit more than passion, right? But it stems from the heart, loving every scholar that walk in that building, to support every family. You have to have empathy. You have to lead with empathy in order to make this work happen and sustainable.
And Michael, how about you?
Tracey really took my thunder in emphasizing the passion and the heart behind the work. It's that commitment that makes you say things need to improve here for my kid. I am going to start with setting high expectations and making sure that the kids get the best. I will throw in a bit of a technical issue here, and this is more at the district level than at the school level. But in places where I have seen really improve on a citywide level, there was a systematic set of efforts or reforms, if you will, that were pursued at the systems level that improved the overall performance of kids in the city. But there was also efforts like Tracey is pursuing at the school level, because there will be some schools that are just seemingly immune to whatever it is the system put in place. So you need a system strategy you need a school strategy, and then you need a strategy for kids or student groups that are chronically not doing very well. And so you almost need a three-tier strategy in any big city in order to successfully put together elements by which the whole system and the kids in it thrive. Let me cite what's going on in Philadelphia right now. Here was a school district that by and large, had a very fractured instructional program. Every school was doing something a little different. There was no definition by the system itself about what it wanted its kids to learn and at what level of depth. But just over the last couple of years, it realized, thankfully, through some of the research that we were doing, that the strategy that it had pursued of just letting 1,000 flowers bloom just was not moving the whole system. So they paid a lot more attention to what the standards meant. They put into place a much more cohesive curriculum that was better aligned to the standards. They altered their professional development and capacity building efforts to make sure teachers in the school had the capacity to deliver on the standards that had been defined. And lo and behold, look at Philadelphia right now. It's showing some of the fastest gains of any big city in the country.
Tracey, where can people find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
You can follow our school Instagram, which is CES, Christopher Elementary School. .org is our website. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just put in 23K150 and they will be able to follow us and or see all the amazing things that we're having in our school community.
Tracey, tell us about your children's book that you wrote.
I'm super excited about it. It's the first one. It's really about this little girl who is scared to show her excellence. But eventually she came around to acknowledge and celebrate all of the hard work that she has done. And she was able to be a principal for a day, and it was a great experience for her.
Michael, how about you?
People who are interested in just urban education in general and some of the resources that urban education has produced in order to help everybody get better can be found on the Council of the Great City Schools website, which is cgcs.org. And there you'll find lots of operational tools, lots of instructional tools, lots of tools on the standards, lots of recommendations on students with disabilities, on students who are English learners. We have a series of resources on African American males, lots of resources to help schools and school districts get better. If you want to know a little bit about me, you might pick up my latest book, which was The Enduring Promise of America's Great City Schools. It talks about the importance of urban schools, our contribution to the country, progress that we've made over the years, what distinguishes really improving urban schools from schools that have not improved as much, talks about some of the costs of the pandemic and where urban education goes from here.
Both of you, thank you so much for your time tonight.
I just want to congratulate Tracey on all of the great work that she's done and getting your school out of the watch list by the state. That's terrific work. So we're going to start using you as one of our exemplars.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure meeting you, and I will also be reading your book just to get more insight on urban schools in America. That had to be fascinating to research and go around and see the great work that's happening within the nation.
So great.
Thank you again, both. This has been lovely.
Thank
you, John.
Thank you for listening today. I hope you got some great tips that you can bring back into your teaching. Remember, have a life teaching without sacrificing your own. Also, don't forget to subscribe and be well.